I hope everybody's having a good day. If you're joining in, and it's going to be the last one that I think I'm going to do on Facebook. And I'm just going to plug these through for YouTube only from now on, because what's the point of having this run on 2 separate platforms? That's just crazy. It's crazy. That's crazy. So that's what I thought I'd do. Anyhow, all right. I'm ready to get the drawing board in front of the camera. Yeah. All right. So one of the things that I've been doing is finishing off the Village Haunted piece, and we're almost there. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness gracious. So we're at the point now where I'm just clocking in these last so many panels, and it's feeling good. I'm trying different things with the panel layouts. I'm pushing myself a little bit creatively like that, and I highly recommend for anyone that's working on a project to step outside their comfort zone. But we're at the point now with the story that because I've got scenes going back to previous scenes, I'm having to pull up old pages and look at the characters in said old pages. So in this piece here, in this page specifically, I've got characters. The 2 boys are now coming up to the scene where at the start of chapter 2, we had the 2 young girls coming home from their choir practice at church after school. And then a ghost calls them when there's no one around, and it sounds like this sounds coming from the ground, coming from the school itself. So it scares them and they run home. When it turns out to be these 2 goons hiding behind a tree. And so I'm having to draw that in now. But the thing is that with drawing in those characters, it helps to, because this is a previous scene, it helps me to pull off, pull up, I guess, the old image from that page, the first page that they show up on, and to be able to look up those characters and to source them so that, I can get a good look at their outfits, what they're carrying, and what they're carrying on what side. When it comes to the coloring process, well, you just pull up the colors from the previous page. But when it comes to trying to figure out how to draw these characters, I have to remember who's holding what and in what hands. So tricky, and it's something that's necessary in the process of, as you move to that later on page, that you make sure that they're standing in the right place with one another, since you're referring back to an earlier scene. And it's important that you make sure that they've got the outfits on that you had before, and that they're drawn a similar way. It's one thing when you're just drawing a generic, hey, this is the costume a person wears all the time. And so it becomes easier to remember after so many times of drawing a character in said costume that that's their outfit, that's the kit that they wear. And it's a very different thing than when you're having to go back and reassess each time this character's outfit, this character's thing, because you're not drawing these characters all the time. It's just a occasional appearance. And even more specifically than that, it's an occasional appearance that references back to a previous one. So you got to make sure you have all those elements together in the same way. So that's what I'm doing. That's why I have to check back against the previous pages that I'm working on. But still adding in these new story elements and story bits, and story beats, and new different perspectives on how the characters are running about. Okay, so this is yeah, I'm going to stop putting these up on Facebook. I do appreciate that people are tuning in on Facebook. It doesn't mean I don't love everybody, but it would help me if I had this directed through one platform, and it would help to maximize that platform so that it for one thing, I think it's going to stream better because I'm not streaming over two different media devices or media platforms. How many times can I say platform? So I think that that's what I'll be doing starting tomorrow. So everyone wants to listen to my podcast, or EWTLTMP, small p, which is so easy to remember, will be located on YouTube only. So if you want to get involved there, and specifically if you want to jump in with some comments and some thoughts of your own, and sharing some stuff and having some fun, taking part of things, that's the place to do it. I don't think I'm allowed to get commentary from people from Facebook, and so this is why I feel like people are being left out of things because they're only coming in through the one platform. So this is why I'm just doing it off of the one, and then the people that are there can get fully engaged and know what's going on when I'm talking to. I'm responding to a comment, but they don't see the comment and they don't get to respond to it either. So that's no fun. Let's all have some fun. But these are the little things that I'm trying to streamline. I'm trying to tighten up on. This is by no means do I have any illusions that I'm going to be a podcast star. I'm having fun, and I'm working in the studio anyhow, and it's a way to reach out to the world. So, hey, I've got a question for today, and again, I'm not entirely sure who sees this and who doesn't, but the question for today is the strangest PG, parental guidance, the strangest character that you can think of. Go. What is it? What's the craziest character you can come up with? I really like when you come across, and you don't come across this in mainstream material, let's be honest, but I really like when you come across independent characters, and they're nuts. They're just goofy. One that I referenced even yesterday was Ben Edlund's The Goon. No, that's Eric Powell. Ben Edlund's The Tick. The Goon was going to be another one I'm going to reference. The Tick is just ridiculous. He's just to show my level of naivete when I was younger. I wasn't sure what bug he was based on. At first, when I was reading the Tick, I'm like, what bug is this supposed to be? Oh, a tick's a real thing. Blonde moment. So, but I mean, that's my point is that there's a character that's just ridiculous. It's Dave Sim in Cerebus had a character that kept changing his costume, but when he began, he started as if I'm not mistaken, at one point he was the Wolverine it's Wolverine cockroach, sort of a mixed character, which I thought was just fantastic. Or Eric Powell's The Goon. I mean, The Goon is wonderful. This isn't bug based by any means, the Eric Powell Goon character, but some of the fantastically fun elements of that character is that he's this heartbroken former circus employee that wears a big slouch hat, and over his eyes you never really see his eyes, and his teeth are large and crooked, and he's got a nose that's clearly been smacked a few times, and his buddy Frankie is this sort of weird kind of half animated but much darker character than the Goon, and they live in a boarding house or a hotel, Heartbreak Hotel, no less. They don't broadcast it every time, but there's a couple of moments where they say it, and you're like, perfect. But they live in the Heartbreak Hotel, which is located down at the very end of Lonely Street, which is one of those fantastic little things to just structure into your character. You know, an Elvis joke. Since my baby left me, I found a new place to dwell down at the end of Lonely Street in Heartbreak Hotel. Fantastic. And if that's just the start of it all, I mean, that's just the start of the type of humor that is inside a lot of Eric Powell's material. So highly recommend that, because that's the sort of quirky character, uniqueness that only comes about from a person that's inspired from their own center of creativity. And all the things that Eric Powell's gone on to do, things like Chimichanga and Hillbilly, are all very much rooted in these fantastic approaches to storytelling of genuinely authentic characters created by the the book's writer and artist, and they come from a place of authenticity. I mean, and that's the way it should be when we're putting together whatever we're putting together. Trying to get a look at the one young lady's purse. As I've got the two girls here running home. And one of the choices that I made for this panel is to bring up that they're breaking out, that they're breaking away. I've actually pushed them outside of the confines of the panel. Just maybe that implies a little more movement to them as they're running away from this thing, what scares them, you. And, trying to get right costumes from the period here. The story is set in the 1970s. So here's my basic layout for this lower part of the page. Top part of the page being finished. It's the two boys picking up from where we left off in the previous page, where they were harassing the local priest in the church, and then they're walking their bikes through the path in the woods. Then now they're riding through the schoolyard behind the high school, coming to rest at this tree. There's the roughs for all of that, by the way. And then they see the two girls on the street as they're walking past, and call out to them to harass them about, just to call out and harass them. They're turkeys. So there's those elements. And so now I'm referring back to that first scene in chapter 2, where the girls respond, oh my goodness, with fear. And then the next thing they do is pick up and run home. And so one of the things that I've done is I've put a pop bottle in the one young girl's hand, and in this image up here, as she was holding in the first time that we saw these two in a different angle from the scene. So I made sure of that, but when they're running home, you don't see the pop bottle because she actually leaves it on the ground. But that's a piece of information that you got in chapter 2, is that there's a panel that just shows the pop bottle left behind. So trying to keep those little elements in there. That's the sort of thing that you need to be conscious of, you need to be aware of, but at the same time, it's an aspect of your storytelling. So now the way that I've drawn their pants is not defined as yet. All I was really doing here was drawing their forms, and so I mean I'm gonna flare out their pants because it is the 70s, and all the pants were flares. At this point in time, you didn't find a lot of diversity in the the clothes. There was a very clear style. So I wanted to make sure I did that as I'm drawing these characters. But at the same time, you know, just make sure I get the key elements of their costumes in, their high waist jeans, and they're both wearing a kind of blue jeans, so I want to make sure I get some of those elements, like the back pockets and so on and so forth. So it's the little things, right, that add up over time. And I'm referring back to that over on my monitor to the left. I'm referring back to that previous appearance of them and making sure that there's some consistency. This story is pretty relaxed compared to some of the other things that I've done that are pretty quirky. Ideally with this project, the reason that it's taken me a while is because I'm doing this while I'm doing other things, because those things honestly take precedence for my timetable, because I really want to make sure that I keep up with the obligations that I have and the things that I've agreed to do for others, you know. But this is one that is going to either A, be self-published, or B, this is the first one that I'm going to take to somebody else. That is done entirely on my own, but then brought to somebody else for them to look at. And it's a publishing opportunity, hopefully, ideally. You know, and so there's the thing, is that when I'm doing something like this, or when I'm doing any project, really, I'm trying to think of all these key elements of whatever the story is and stay to the tight approach, the tight format of how I'm drawing this thing. I've shown recently in a previous post of pages from the one-page comic extravaganza, and in the advert for today's video is one that shows many of the different materials that I have on my desk that I use in creating pages and comics and so on and so forth. And so, and that still doesn't account for paper that I'll change the surface with, and it still doesn't account for, you know, the paints and the scraping tools or whatever else I might be using in the process of things. And whereas with this project, I'm drawing in pencil, and that's fine. I mean, that's great. It's the rules are working, that I'm sticking to the way that I intended for this project. So it has a very clear stylistic approach, but I tend not to just work in one static form. Even if I'm drawing initially in pencil, and I do that, I'll switch it up when I'm doing the inking process, or, you know, or I'll not draw in pencil, but draw in pen instead, or something like that. Like, there's so many different options that we can come at how we're going about creating the pages that we're doing for the stories that we're trying to tell. And so in this context, this works. These rules work that I'm adhering to here. But honestly, there's a part of me that's pretty keen on the fact that I'm almost done this. And the reason that I'm pretty keen on the fact that I'm almost done this, one, sense of completion, yes, project done, but also because I'm ready to get on and working in different ways. And so I have a number of ideas of things that I want to do, and whether they're one-page comics or they're, you know, I'm still working on Stream of Conceitedness, Volume 2 right now. I'm 12 pages into that. So there's enhancements that I'm doing to stream as I go along doing it. Because honestly, I started stream just before the lockdown, a year before the lockdown happened, and it sort of got shelved for other things, and then brought up and then shelved. And so what I did in drawing those pages and panels is I work a little pretty differently now. So I want to make sure that the pages that I'm putting out, if I can improve those in any way, I'm going to do it without having to redo all the work that I've already done. So, that's the thing. And it's important that whatever it is that we're working on, we look at how we're telling the story, or we look at what the piece is, and if there are rules for how it's to be done, whether those rules are established if you're working for somebody else, or if those rules are something that you yourself have defined, you got to stick to them to some extent. And if you think, or have departure moments, and what I mean by departure moments is, well, this episode's entirely animated. Like this episode looks entirely like a cartoon. Or this episode is very, you've got people together to act out as the characters, and you've got this photorealistic style, because you really are largely having people dress up as these characters and take pictures for you, not just to use as a resource or as source material for while you're driving, but to actually insert those into the panels. So there's a number of different ways that you can once you establish those rules, you need to stick to them, however. And there's the trick. There's the whole thing about whatever your creative process is. You have to maintain it with some degree. I'm seeing people do different things and approach things in different ways, and then switch directions on themselves. And the problem with doing that sometimes is that if you do switch those directions, you might well upend your own apple cart. Oh, Philip. Hello, Philip. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Philip. Well, I hope that the notification came 20 minutes after I started. Well, that stinks. I hope that people are getting notifications in time. I find that a lot of people tend to come in a few minutes into this. And so maybe that's happening across the board. But you're here. Good to see you. Well, good. Yeah, you know what I mean. It's the trickiest thing about, I'm just talking about processes again, and some of these little things that we can be conscious of in order to allow ourselves. So wackadoo line. How did I do that? No, it's good. All right. Some of the things that we can be conscious of when we're working and making decisions about what it is that we're doing and how we're going about on this project, to make it easier on ourselves over the course of it, by having a set of rules when we're doing what we're doing that we're trying to adhere to. Like, you're not going to, stop inking halfway through the book. You've started with the inking, you're going to need to follow through on the inking. You're watching yesterday but had to slip out. You weren't feeling great. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I hope you feel better today. But it's nice that you check in on things. And I took a little break over the holidays. I really didn't do much of anything as far as it goes for posting and doing a lot of live stuff over the holidays, over the Christmas, New Year's period. And it was largely because I just needed to step back for a moment. And in stepping back for a moment, it allowed me to recharge my batteries. So it's important, if you're not feeling great, or if your clock's wound down a little bit, to take that moment. Good for you. Some people don't know how to do that. 100% disclosure for a long time. I didn't know to do that. Some days are better than others. That's a U2 song. Well, I'm glad today's a better day than yesterday. How's that? Well, once you get a little bit of recharge, lets you be able to figure out what's next, but at the same time, it lets you maybe realize that just take slow steps. Slow steps. Steps. So this part that I'm drawing right now is where the dialogue balloons are going. This area here really doesn't matter at the end of the day because this is largely going to be covered up by what have I got going there? What have I done now? Oh, that's right. Okay. This area is going to be largely covered up by word balloons. So, and it's really just to fill the background, to give some sort of depth or density to the page, to the panel specifically, to the images that are laid out. So, you know, it's tricky enough to try to get your drawing done and your book on its way, and the characters doing the things that they need to be doing for storytelling. So sometimes just taking a couple moments to put in some scenes in the background, some elements that sort of round out the context. Because I've got silhouettes in this top panel, but I don't have the street drawn as I have the streets drawn in chapter 2, where these characters, where we see the same situation here from these characters' perspective. So I needed to make sure that I put some of that here. And so here I go, putting in some of these hedges and bushes and things in the front of these properties, and some steps and so on and so forth. You know, it's just to give some foundation, some sort of way of planting the seed, I guess, of here's where the scene is, here's where the characters are. It's the little things. And because if I can just do it basic and convincing enough that people get the gist of it, that's fine. I get to move on, and, you know, I've rooted the characters into a place, and I don't have to be so overly developed when it comes to this drawing because, you know, it's going to be covered up with text for the most part, but there needs to be enough recognizable imagery underneath it so that in the areas that do pop out, you can still tell, well, there's a house from across the street there. And, you know, all those key little expectations of a couple of girls running home in the suburbs, 1970s are there. So I'm just, you know, you go into the old memory bank and you think about properties and houses and try to put those into your imagery. Oh, there's, hi, Seven. Thank you as always. Thank you very much, Seven. So that's what I tend to do, is that I want to make sure I've got the key elements in here first, which is, you know, the girls and the situation that they're going through and their responses to that and the emotional connection. But that's why you see me draw those characters first, and then I fill in the background and I populate what's going on in the scene around them, because honestly, what's the priority here is our characters. I don't know if other people do it that way, but that tends to be how I do it. I've got a friend of mine, he never draws the background at all. It's just the characters and their engagements together. And I think that there's something to that, but in the way that he works. But I find that I've seen other people that don't root the characters in in some way in the world around them. And you can tell it distances you from where they are and the context of where, where are they in a relationship to the space around them and so forth. So it's tricky. So I'm just putting in some pieces of houses here, and away we go. My really, really rough way of doing perspective, lack thereof, in the scene here. But it works to some extent for me, so. I'm not, again, overly concerned about what's happening in these houses, in this environment back here. This really doesn't matter. What matters is what's going on with these two girls. But to some extent, it looks like a suburban street now because we just put this little bit of hoo-ha in the back. Looks like they're walking downhill. Well, good enough. They're walking down street. There's a slope up to the houses across the way. So, yeah, sort of a hilly street. Because unfortunately, how I set myself up was that I put all the houses elevated from the street. So, yeah, they are kind of walking down a hill or a ward perspective on the houses. So I'm just carrying that through. In these places that aren't going to be seen anyways. As they're saying, exciting pieces of dialogue. Like, oh my god, Tommy. Oh, I know, Becky. Oh my god. Word balloon, word balloon, word balloon, word balloon. Like they're on the side of a hill, looking down on the houses. Yep, good enough. Yeah, that works for me. So when it comes to drawing, the project that I'm putting together is really mixed media. The stream of conceit in this book. But I'm really excited for a little segment that's coming up in that because it's going to be a little animated business, animated style, sort of like let me think of who. Sean Galloway, I think he does a sort of animated style when he's working. So it's sort of that kind of. Using blue and brown lines in there for some of the definition of the characters and not sticking to the hard black and really working on the pillow approach to everybody and drawing everybody with a really bendy style. Fats and slims and lots of more perspective. So back to the reaction shot, so the turnaround. So I'm going back to this location here. Yep, Sean Galloway is a type of caricature guy, but I would argue that he draws his caricature work to look like, I think he's trying to emulate Saturday morning cartoon style. Yeah, sure. There's 7 is applied logic to the image for me. There we go. Thank you, 7. Homes and buildings are built on a slight slope to help during heavy rainy season. Yes. That's I didn't think of it in that regard, but that works. So I've pushing the camera perspective here in this panel because I don't want to draw this entire tree again. So I've reduced the amount of tree that's in the shot so that I can spare myself having to to draw all of that again, and that's not the key piece of importance. It is in the sense that they're hiding behind it, but the key piece of importance here is how these two are carrying on, laughing their guts out as the girls have run away. What's this here? Oh, there was Seven's comment there. I'm thinking someone else from the UK, but Sean Galloway does amazing work. Subscribe to him on Instagram. Seven says that my street design also prevents sinkholes. That's great. It also protects people from the robots. It's hard for the robots to go up and down on those hills. So, yeah, Sean Galloway is pretty fantastic, but Sean Galloway uses this brown or blue line for the characters. And I really like how that enhances the work and the coloring that he does. But it's very much a thing you'd see in 80s cartoons, which I believe is what he grew up on. I'm putting the red line around the two characters here in order to accentuate them in my drawing. It also gives a slightly darker and thicker black line around them when I switch to the inks. And I switch to the inks by taking my pencils, scanning them, and switching them to black. But it helps also to push the planes around a little bit. What I mean by that is it makes them pop up from the background a little bit. Woo-woo! And I'm considering that in the next thing that I'm doing, where as I'm drawing with these two colors when I'm doing the initial pencil work, I'm considering in the next thing that I'm doing to make sure that this exterior line around here like this is a brown line or a blue line or something like that, to just purposely push the planes in the next stage. There we go. You don't let me down, Seven. Protection against robots. Roller skates or rollerblades. Protecting the suburbs from robots, roller skates, or rollerblades. So my question today in the post is, let me roll back up to it and pop it on. The strangest, PG character that you can think of. Go! What is the strangest PG character that you can think of? The strangest PG character you can think of. Well, put that out to the audience there and see what we get back. And some weird, wild stuff. Yes. It's always fun to me when people come up with wackadoo characters. I love it. It's good to see. It's good to see stuff like that. Can't be somebody else's. It's your own character. You got to come up with your own character, Seven. The weirdest thing that you can think of. Or a weird thing anyways. Some level. This is one of the things that I keep, the reason that I keep my sketchbooks around is that I make these notes in my sketchbooks of my crazy story ideas. I figured out a way to do a certain page for the Stream of Conceit in this book that fills up a scene, like enhances a scene from the way that I had initially put it together. And I said, it just needs something more. And so during the course of action, I'm inserting I don't know if anybody remembers Vice documentaries. I don't know if they even still make them, but we don't get them. We don't have cable, but we don't get them on Netflix or Prime, as far as I know. But these documentaries some of them are really funny, because you've got these real kind of bro types that are doing these. So anyways, here I am finding out about like these abandoned buildings, and like turn around inside of them, and their eyes are closed, and they're like, yeah, right. And they're those guys. And I think that that's hilarious. I always thought that those things were, maybe I found them a little funnier than was initially intended by the creators. But I'm going to insert a page that I'm looking forward to drawing of a guy. So here I am at this place, narrating something that's going on as this character is running through. Just to pad an idea into the story. But the way he talks in the camera, I'm going to censor every couple words with little censor stamps. So there's beep guy over here beeping, and the thing beep, right? Yeah, I mean, silent like beep. So this whole page is going to have 20 little censor patches over his text, because as he's narrating a show, and it just cuts into the book, the main book. It's, just establishes the tone and the entirety of this character in a simple way of having this affectation there that sort of roots him as somebody that has a uniqueness to him, because he swears every 23 seconds, and he's supposed to be hosting a broadcast of some kind. So in this one, I have got the two boys laughing their guts out, as these little maniacs do. So I'm just going to put a rough structure of where they are in relationship, to the environment. And it also helps to work as a break. And what I mean as it works as a break is that the next panel, so there's a conclusion to the previous page's arc of them going and harassing the priest, and then the next situation is they see the old man McTavish, and what they consider to be him kidnapping a girl. So they try to chase him, but they get lost in the paths and separated from McTavish. So as they're leaving the paths and going through the schoolyard, then I got a break of the two of them yawning at the tree. So that's like a break from the previous story conceit. And then here's the introduction of the two girls, chapter 2, page 1. We're into that, another perspective on that scene and the action that they take, and that further rounds out that scene. But it ends here with the two of them laughing, and these last 3 panels is onto another action. And so I'm using these open panels like breaks. It's a little sort of subversive, unspoken means that I'm using to work as a physical example, but at the same time as a subconscious example that says that this is over at this point, this moves to this point, and then this is the third point. So it's something I was trying to think about a little further, of how can I stretch 3 key elements, 3 key actions on a page without it looking like they all just run together. What can I do on a subconscious level to say, these things, these are 3 separate bits. So this is the approach I came up with. And so now here's the two boys laughing their guts out under the tree. Move that up a little bit. It's kind of small. It's a really small head here that I'm drawing. And so because these two turkeys are now enjoying the fruit of their labors, I can move on to the next part, which is them seeing the car go by that is driven by Old Man McTavish and having the little girl in the back window with her hand pressed on the glass, which is enough, hopefully, of a motivator, which is really what we want to leave each page with. But hopefully this is enough of a motivator for people to want to flip the page and continue on. Good heavens. What has 7 given us here? This is our sentence of the day. Strangest PG character that you can think of. Go. And 7 has come up with Insect Power Strike Force. 8 teens with incredible strength and skills that are masters of different martial arts, combined with really cool insect costumes and weapons fighting evil. Cool. Yeah, that's not that strange, though. I mean, that sort of sounds like a sort of different take on combining different elements. I like it. It's like Sectars and Power Rangers together. I think that's kind of fun. Is there something in that narration? Is there something in that approach that is going to give it its own unique voice? Yes, Phil, the idea is, what's the strangest PG character that I'll pop it up again. Strangest PG character that you can think of. Go. I like that. I like that a lot, 7. It is a little close to other things, though. So you got to put a spin on that. You got to put a spin of, like a conceptual spin, in the sense that rather than having another one of these types of team books like that, what would you do in the writing process of it to distinctly make it its own separate and unique thing? Like, is there, these guys are conscripted against their will. These guys have been genetically bred for this, and they've just found out. Like, is there a specific angle that is going to be disclosed along the way that causes some conflict or causes some difference in those characters? But it's a fun idea. I'm curious as to what Philip comes up with here. So now I'm just drawing the two boys laughing their guts out. And this one is holding his guts in. And then as I'm drawing this, I'm trying to think of the clothing and how the pants would work, and how the clothing works on the character, and if the leg is raised in the air, does gravity, are these pants or shorts loose that they would drop back some, making sure that I get those little pieces like the socks and so on and so forth on the characters. So it's all that stuff that you got to keep track of, keep in mind as you're working to tell the story element. Other people make it look so easy. If there's one thing that I'm kind of exempling by doing these videos, is there's a lot of thinking that goes into it that I don't know that other people consider. Yes, there's lots of people that consider it. Of course there are. There's so many far better storytellers than I am. But it's there. You know, a lot. Sometimes it feels like when you see these people portrayed as like, no, there's no dilemma whatsoever. They just bop, bop, bop. There's the page. You have no idea of all those insights and things that they had to consider as they were working. You just make it look like it's easy. So here's the first kid leaning against the tree, having himself a good old chuckle. And the second kid, of course, is going to be behind him doing the same. But I'm going to stand him up. And I'm leaving this open-faced panel as well. So just again, to work as that break. So I wonder what Philip is coming up with for Strange's PG character. And what I mean by PG character, of course, is it's got to be an all ages thing. Where would, if this is the arm of this tree, would be up in here. And we would have some leaves down around that top line. So, yeah, use the paper. Don't use an actual ruler. So put the shadow under the branch there. Put some cross tipping on the tree. It's a branch, ladies and gentlemen. Here we go. Oh, happy day. And then, of course, we can fill the actual shape of the frame in with color only. And it just makes it sort of an open-ended, just nice flat color field. I like that a lot. I recommend people take a look at an writer and illustrator named Asaf Hanukkah. Asaf, A-S-A-F, H-A-N-U-K-A. There's two Hanukkahs. There's Asaph and then there's Asaph and Homer? Asaph and... I'm sorry, I can't remember the brother's name right now. But they're both great illustrators. But I tend to like the realist books by Asaph. I find this very enjoyable. Tone down the sides a little bit. I was trying to make the shoulders too broad on this character. Here we go. And so this is our young man with the collar and the pants. Busting a gut. That's the official term. I'm going to draw him like I've drawn him in the previous panels where he's standing up and behind the other character. And that this will do for this story point, scaring the girls. And I'm pleased that I managed to get that across basically in 6 panels. What, honestly, I could have taken an entire page to tell, but I really didn't want to. I really wanted to do this as tightly as I could because I don't want to just belabor the issue and spend pages and pages and pages of trying to tell these different actions that they did throughout the course of the day. I really just kind of wanted to get it established and done with so that we can move on to the summation. The next page is where the boys chase the car and they follow it back to the estate grounds of Old Man McTavish. And at the end of this section is where we link up to the end of the previous chapter that followed the other characters on their way to Old Man McTavish's house. So, and the two groups meeting up. So and that just takes me to that final chapter, which is really about summing up the story. Which this could be on some level, but it's not. It's not. It's not what the story is actually about. All right, Seven's adding on to the previous idea. They fight evil, like the show Supernatural, but fun, like the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew, with X-Files that keep the balance in check. Fancy. It's a fancy line. Some teens were messing with the occult. The magic opened portals from the dark abyss. There you go. Lots of elements in there. They're sort of blending a whole bunch of different things. I like it. And that's the sort of thing that lets you, with whatever your story is, whatever your project is, it lets you make it individually your own. Sure, you're going to incorporate lots of things in there that are things that you enjoy from other things that you've watched or other things that you've read. There's certain things that you find cool. Like, I don't know, some people like Cthulhu, and so they'll try to fit Cthulhu into their stories or do Cthulhian tales, because that's their thing. Other people stay rooted in sci-fi. I like that. I like when people do that, where they find their own voice, their own independent approach to it, and rather than being a generic thing, even though it has a lot of those, something will have a lot of those elements, it's not. It's very much their own because of the way that they've approached it and processed it. So good on you. All right, so this is going to be an open-ended panel. It's really just a color field. So I'm debating on whether or not I round this out. Oh, what's Philip up to? Philip, packing up decorations. Drawing a blank on a character on the moment? Get back to me about that. Yeah, packing up the Christmas stuff. My wife and I had a talk about that because January is kind of blasé. And February is when you start getting into Valentine's Day or whatever else. So we're going to leave our decorations up when we feel like taking them down. When we're inspired to clean it all up, we will do so. But the process of putting them up is so much of a labor that we're going to take our sweet time to get to the assemblage of it. I think I need to put in the background of the school here in behind the boys. So I think I'm going to put that in, but as a silhouette, just as a flat. I'll put the information in here, and I'm not going to block it out with excuse me, hiccups there. I'm not going to shade it out. I'm going to just put these different elements in there and draw together the context of this scene so that the person that's viewing it can start to, or can at least hopefully leave this with a connection of how these things all fit together, where the fence is in the background for the field, the baseball diamond, and so on and so forth. But I'm just trying to keep that pretty straightforward and loose, and to do it just with a line. So I might even just take this one out too. Oh, what do we got with 7? So my 7 likes making movies. There you go. Yeah, you gotta have fun. You gotta have fun and just throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks. You can emulate shots that you've seen in other films. Why not? I think I need to bring this down. You can do all kinds of things in whatever means that you're finding your exploring story. So, yeah, good on you. Yeah, there you go. Phil tries to leave his decorations up to the 6th, which is the Epiphany. But because he's got so many hours coming up at work, it's going to take a week to get all the decorations put away. Good heavens, how many decorations have you got up? My wife calls how I do things my Tasmanian devil mode. And what she means by that is I will go through the house like a tornado and just sort of get it all put away. Not necessarily, in a chaotic way, but definitely in my own little, it's all happening type thing. It's at the end of so many hours, I'm going to be exhausted, but it's gone. But like I said, fairly chaotic, And when it's coming to things like decorations and that, okay, there could be breakage. It's not the intent, of course, and not that I'm actively trying to break things. It's just, it could happen. So I'm putting the building in the background at a lower angle to show that it's closer to the kids. You should see the place. All your parents, and there's so many you couldn't fit them all. A lot of them are delicate. See, that's what takes the time, is the delicate stuff. And the delicate stuff is the stuff I'm not allowed to touch. Not that my wife's ever said, you're not allowed to touch those, but let's be honest. She knows I shouldn't be touching those. Okay, so just using simple lines, I've put into the background the larger scene elements so that it's all here, folks. It's all here. And without having to draw too much attention to them. So they're there and the green fills the area and, yeah. And then that sort of lets me get away with, yeah, good enough, done, next scene. Next scene. Next. Which is, I've considered, and drawing the kid that I'm about to put in, I've considered that, I want to push that into the center area as well. So I'm just pulling out the image I had here earlier. And away we go. Yeah. Where the heck did I put it? Sometimes you get too many projects going on at once and you'll save something to the wrong thing. Oh, that's the worst. That's the worst thing ever. Because then you've got, you don't know where you put that file. You don't know where you put that image. So anyhow, so that I know that because I'm going to erase this, I'm just going to do this for myself. Well, I say erase, but what I really mean is after I've scanned this part gets underneath the panel, gets deleted out. So I can put these 2 little marks there to say that's the extent of that panel. So that tells me to keep inside here like I've kept inside there, a little bit of space, and I'm going to do it with an even piece of space for the hand I'm about to draw, and extend it out from the character. As the one character says, look over there. But can it be? So, yeah. But I went and scribbled this out before. And now it's sort of falling through. I'm putting together those little bits and bobs. And this will start up the next piece. And then by the end of today, this page is done, which is a good feeling. You know, it's fun to, the little hurdles. You gotta appreciate and celebrate overcoming the little hurdles. And the little hurdle here is to get these characters drawn out and to get these characters in the scene to establish this action point. And okay, that's done. So now it's exciting to do the next action point, which is the teenage girls. And then that's resolved. And so it's exciting to do the next action point, which is, there's the car, let's go get it. And so breaking up whatever the project is into these little snippets, gives something to the process to say that, you know, here we go. This leads to this. This leads to this. This leads to this, and it helps to push things along. To look at it like that, it helps to motivate you along and to celebrate a million little victories in the course of getting to your end goal. At least that it does for me. I tend to find that helps. Because at the end of the day, it's about doing what we can to tell the stories that we're trying to do. So this is what I'm trying to do, is to bring us into the next part by drawing the attention from the one character into the next panel. Look there. And I'm being a little ridiculous. I used to have this rule that if you point this way for people to look, that where they're pointing is where your eye should draw to the object that they're actually pointing at. So I'm breaking that rule right now, and completely fine with doing it. You know, is it something that a good editor would look at and say, you know, you guys point the wrong way? Yeah, probably. Oh yeah, for sure. But I don't have an editor. I got me. I edit myself. Boy, oh boy. Well, drawing lots of books is good, but finishing those books is another thing. And sorry, I'm responding to a comment from Seven. Getting all these books laid out and stuff is fantastic, but the question I have for you next is, are you going to ink them, and are you going to do more formal lettering on them? What I mean by more formal lettering is consider doing the lettering in a different program, or in a computer program to enhance the little spit and polish on it. Or are you going to do the lettering by hand and with pen or with brush or whatever it is you ink with, or you letter with? How are you going to go about that? Or are you going to leave it as is with just doing the pencils and then, you know, on to the next project? The question to ask yourself when you get to that stage in anything, Seven, or anybody else that might watch this, is what do you want the result to look like, the end finish on this this project that you're working on now? What do you want the end result to be? Do you want it to look to have the aesthetic of pencils and then a very underground rough finish, or do you want to have it be an inked project and look for a little more polish to it? That's what's next, really, is to consider those things in your process and to keep that some consistency to that. Certain people tend not to like pencils only. Certain people like pencils only a lot because it gives them insights in the process. But what you have to ask yourself, what is it you're trying to come across with in the project that you're doing, and is there a certain expectation for the finished look? I'm going to ink the whole thing in really thick markers that bleed terribly and smudge all the work that I've done. And yeah, that's what I'm going for. That's a referential joke, by the way. Right? When I was a young man, and my friend and I would draw comic ideas and comic pages at the dining room table in his house, we'd do the penciling work and then go, okay, now we're going to ink. And then we'd use these awful markers that just completely butchered our pencils. And then we found this really incredible process that you could do where you hold your paper up to the window and you tape over a nicer piece of paper so you don't wreck your pencils. And so we would do that, and then we'd ink the page, but with these terrible markers still, and make a mess because they would bleed through the paper and still make a mess of the pencil pages. It took a little time to find that process for us, but it was fun. It was fun doing this and drawing these things together. And we went on to work on one of the first things that we ever had published. We did together. It was an anthology, so it's very exciting. Years later, but you get there along the way. You trial and error some stuff, but we didn't think at the time about the types of markers that we were using. So first thing we did was really just make a mess of all the time and effort we put into drawing these pages. And then as soon as we use these clunky markers, they're like kids markers, like they're like a Crayola thing. It was something like, hold on, like this type of a thing, and just brutalized our pages. So live and learn. Yeah. So I'm just finishing off this guy. Now, the question I ask myself, of course, is do I put the other young man in the image, because he would be, from the vantage point of the camera, he would be right here in front of, oops, I'm sorry, I'll move that up. He would be right here in front of this young man. So do I bother putting him in the image or not? Now, if it's because I want to have consistency of where people are in relationship to one another, I really should put him in the foreground. But I think that what I'm going to do instead is just focus on this boy's call to attention for us of something that he sees, and then put a fun effect in the background. Some sort of gray tone thingamabobber there that just sort of fills up the space a little bit and makes a little more definition on our guy. So nicely playing. What I can do now is go ahead in here and put the border on the panel. happy day. Do the same thing up here. Now this panel is lower than the panel before it, just for variety, and move the eye around. And even though this is an open panel, it's still going to have the color field there. So here I go, finishing off space around this guy, but his hand's poking through in the same way as these girls' hand and elbow are poking out of the panel at the other side of it. Just fun, something fun, just shaking it up on the page there. So now I just have to draw Bug, as he says, looky there, there is something what is happening in the distance. And no matter how natural it is for people to draw in whatever ways that they're drawing, they still think a lot. If people claim that they don't, well, that might be a fib, because there's still a fair amount of thinking that goes in there. Just going to put the top line on these two panels. And we're at 116. I have something I got to get it. Go and do in a moment. But I think I got enough. So the next page, the next panel that I'll be doing is the back of the two boys' heads. I draw them side by side, but it'll actually be Bug higher and Ricky lower, as they're looking at this would be Bug higher up as he's standing here, and Rookie lower down as he's there with a piece of the tree, maybe, to give you that context. But they're looking at the same street shot that they look at in this earlier panel right here, and they see the car driving by that old man McTavish shows. Need to think about more deeply and try to execute. Inking it will take time, but I will. Sorry, Seven, I missed this. Inking will take more time, but I will try it. Make it more like the Crow Comics finish. Manga style blend, just black and white with hand lettering. There you go. I recommend you get a light table, or you tape paper up to the window in the daytime and then trace. Do your inking that way, and not model up your original pages. And the reason I say that is that so you can try different inking effects, so that you can try different things in order to come across with different approaches to some of the stylization. Try some different stuff out and figure out what it is specifically is going to be the way that you're going to put that spit and polish on your page. And if you are going to do traditional lettering, you got a process there too. You're going to have to juggle with how you go about laying that ink down. And when you've got to make sure you're not always covering up or splashing over your penciling, if you're looking at doing really thinking style like James O'Parr's The Crow. So I'm just getting this fella's nose in here, eyebrows up, and get his eye filled in. I think 7. I hope that's the advice I give helps. Bit of a smudgy nose. I gotta get better erasers. I'm gonna switch these lines up a little bit too. You get good ones of these and you get bad ones of these. This is a bad one. Oops, not too close to the hairline. Top the old noggin. All right, I think I'm gonna wrap it up after this panel, and then just because I got a couple things I gotta do. Got that daily routine down pat. Changing that hair, pushing it out a little more. There we go. More structure of the head. Happy, 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 happy. That might be a little big. In fact, I know it is. So I'll reduce that down in Photoshop. But I'm good with the head that I've drawn. It's just too large. So I'll bring it down. But there we go. So that just leads me on to the next two panels. But we're at about that hour and a half mark. So I think that I'm going to call it there. Yeah, this has been fun. I hope some of the things we talked about have been helpful. These look forward to Phil. If you do come up with an idea, by all means, shoot it at me. Or if anybody else has a crazy PG story idea, I can hear the rain at my window. It's raining. But yeah, this has been fun. A lot of fun. So some of these different elements that I'm trying to do in the page, I don't know. When you're working on your thing, just try to think about how you can do some variation in your panels to keep it interesting. And sometimes the variation has signifiers to it. So, like the open-ended panels here, they're great breaks for story points. So, okay, that's about it for me. I'm going to sign off. I will be back at 2 o'clock tomorrow, and I may have a guest on the show. We might be doing something a little bit different tomorrow, because I think that I've talked to somebody about maybe coming on and chatting with us about process. So check in for that, and we'll see where that goes. But in the meantime, thanks for hanging out, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Have a great day. Bye for now. Hey, keep creating stuff too. Bye for now.